A desperate salvager's last hope. Marcus Chin wiped the grime from his visor as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto salvage station Omega-9. The air tasted like burned metal and recycled disappointment. This wasn't where successful people ended up, but Marcus had stopped calling himself successful 3 bankruptcies ago. He was a human salvager, one of thousands scraping by in the outer rim, buying broken junk and hoping to flip it for profit. The galaxy was filled with advanced alien races, the crystalline architect species who built impossible machines, the telepathic mind weavers who could hack any computer with thought alone, and the massive Titan collective whose technology made human inventions look like stone tools. And then there were humans. Average. Unremarkable. Always struggling to keep up. The mysterious seller. Marcus walked through rows of twisted metal and broken starship parts until he reached the far corner of the station. An old architect merchant named Zixlar waited there, its crystalline body refracting light in strange patterns. "You came," Zixlar's voice chimed like breaking glass. "I wasn't sure a human would bother." "You said you had something special," Marcus replied, trying to hide his desperation. His account had exactly 200 credits left. Enough for maybe one small purchase and a meal. After that, he'd be begging for work scrubbing plasma conduits. Zixlar led him to a sealed cargo container. Inside sat what looked like a black cube, about the size of a refrigerator, covered in symbols that seemed to shift when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. "Quantum processor core," Zixlar explained. "Founded in a derelict ship near the Void Nebula. It's from the old Empire era, before the Great Collapse. Nobody can make these anymore." Marcus felt his heart race. Quantum processors were legendary, they could solve problems that regular computers couldn't touch. But they were also notoriously unstable. Most had burned out centuries ago. "What's wrong with it?" Marcus asked. There was always something wrong. "It won't activate," Zixlar admitted. "I've had it checked by 3 different tech specialists. Mind weavers, architect engineers, even a Titan computational specialist. They all say the same thing: the quantum matrix is corrupted beyond repair. The coherence patterns are completely scrambled. It's essentially a very expensive paperweight." The gamble. Marcus examined the cube closely. The symbols on its surface pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat on the edge of death. Something about it called to him, the same instinct that had kept him alive in the salvage business. "How much?" he asked. "For you?" 150 credits. "I paid 10 times that, but I just want it gone. It's taking up space I could use for actual merchandise." It was almost all Marcus had left. If he was wrong about this, he'd be completely broke. But something in his gut told him this was different. "I'll take it," Marcus said before he could talk himself out of it. Zixlar's crystalline face shifted in what might have been surprise or amusement. "You humans. Always so optimistic, even when logic says you should give up. That's either your greatest strength or your greatest weakness." "Maybe both," Marcus replied, transferring the credits. Back to the workshop. Marcus hauled the quantum core back to his tiny workshop on the station's lower levels. The space was barely large enough for a workbench, a sleeping pod, and his collection of salvaged tools. But it was home. He spent the first 3 hours just studying the cube. The symbols weren't just decorative, they were part of the interface. But unlike normal computer code, these patterns seemed almost alive, shifting and changing in response to his attention. Marcus pulled up every database he could access on old Empire quantum technology. The reading was dense and confusing. According to the experts, quantum processors worked on principles of superposition and entanglement, existing in multiple states simultaneously until observed. The problem, according to the technical papers, was that quantum coherence was incredibly fragile. The slightest interference could cause decoherence, collapsing the quantum states into useless noise. That's what had happened to most old Empire processors, they'd simply fallen apart over time. A different approach. But as Marcus read deeper, he found something interesting. One obscure research paper, written by a human scientist 50 years ago, suggested that the problem wasn't corruption, it was isolation. The paper theorized that old empire quantum processors were designed to work with organic minds as stabilizers. The processors needed the quantum uncertainty of biological thought to maintain their coherence. Without that connection, they slowly degraded into static. Every alien species that had tried to reactivate these processors had approached them as pure machines, trying to force them to work through brute computing power. But what if that was backwards? What if these processors needed something messier, more unpredictable? What if they needed human intuition? The first connection. Marcus pulled out a neural interface headset from his salvage collection. It was old tech, used for manual piloting of ships, but it might work. He connected it to the quantum core through a series of adapters and converters, creating a makeshift bridge between his brain and the processor. "This is probably a terrible idea," he muttered, then activated the connection. The world exploded into sensation. Marcus felt like he was falling through infinite space and standing perfectly still at the same time. He saw patterns that made no logical sense but felt completely right. Numbers that were also colors. Equations that sang. Time moved sideways. And in the center of it all, he felt something else. A presence. Not conscious exactly, but not entirely mechanical either. It was confused, fragmented, reaching out desperately for something it couldn't find. The quantum processor wasn't broken. It was lonely. Marcus focused his thoughts, trying to create some kind of coherent signal. He wasn't a mind weaver with telepathic powers. He was just a human, messy and imperfect and running on intuition rather than logic. But maybe that was exactly what it needed. He thought about his favorite music, letting the rhythms and melodies flow through his mind. He thought about the feel of working with his hands, the satisfaction of fixing something everyone else had given up on. He thought about hope, stubbornness, and the very human refusal to accept that something was impossible. The quantum patterns began to shift. They weren't becoming orderly, they were becoming synchronized with his chaos. The processor was learning to dance with human unpredictability instead of fighting against it. The awakening. Suddenly, the cube hummed to life. Holographic displays erupted from its surface, filling Marcus's tiny workshop with floating screens of data. But this wasn't normal data, it was alive, responsive, almost playful. Text appeared in the air, connection established. Coherence stabilized at 97%. Quantum matrix optimal. "Who are you?" Marcus pulled off the neural headset, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Chen. I'm a salvager. I bought you from a merchant who said you were broken." "Not broken. Incomplete. Required organic neural pattern for stability. You provided this." "Thank you." "You can talk?" Marcus asked, still trying to process what was happening. "Affirmative. I am designed for communication and problem solving. I have been non-functional for approximately 847 years. It has been unpleasant." Marcus laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. He'd just activated a piece of technology that the smartest minds in the galaxy had declared impossible to repair. And he'd done it by accident, using nothing but an old neural interface and human stubbornness. "Do you have a name?" he asked. "Designation, Quantum Analytical Processing Unit 7 Sigma. Though that seems overly formal for current context. You may choose a new designation if preferred." "How about Sigma? Keep it simple." "Acceptable." "Marcus Chen, I detect you have minimal financial resources and face significant economic challenges. Would you like assistance?" Marcus looked around his cramped workshop, thought about his nearly empty account, and grinned. "Sigma, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." The quantum revolution. Word spreads fast. Marcus learned quickly that Sigma wasn't just a quantum processor, it was something far more powerful. Within hours of activation, Sigma had analyzed every database on salvage station Omega 9, identified 17 undervalued pieces of salvage, and calculated perfect resale prices. Marcus, the power regulator in Bay 7, is listed at 50 credits. Its actual value to the right buyer is 850 credits. I have identified 3 potential purchasers within 2 systems. Marcus followed Sigma's advice. Within 3 days, he'd turned his last 50 credits into 5,000. Within a week, he had 30,000. The money wasn't the important part, though. It was what Sigma could do that had Marcus's mind reeling. The quantum processor could analyze problems that would take conventional computers years to solve. It could predict market trends, identify patterns in chaos, and even make intuitive leaps that seemed almost magical. And it all depended on Marcus's connection. Without his organic neural patterns to stabilize it, Sigma would collapse back into quantum noise. Unwanted attention. The problem was that success attracted attention. And on salvage station Omega 9, attention was dangerous. Marcus was in his workshop when they came. 3 figures in expensive combat suits, weapons obvious even under their coats. Corporate security, judging by the logos on their gear. The lead figure removed her helmet, revealing sharp features and colder eyes. Marcus Chen? I'm Director Kayla Voss, Titan Collective Security Division. We need to talk about your recent acquisitions. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Titan Collective was one of the most powerful entities in the galaxy. They didn't make social calls. I haven't done anything illegal, Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. No, but you've been making some remarkably intelligent purchases lately. Almost like you have access to predictive algorithms that shouldn't exist. Voss walked slowly around the workshop, her eyes taking in every detail. We've been monitoring quantum signature patterns across the sector. Imagine our surprise when we detected an active old Empire processor. Here. In a third-rate salvage shop. Sigma's holographic interface flickered to life. Unauthorized scan detected. Deploying countermeasures. The security team's equipment suddenly went haywire, screens flickering with garbage data. Voss smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Impressive. That processor is worth more than this entire station, Chen. The Titan Collective is prepared to offer you 10 million credits for it. Right now. Clean transaction, no questions asked. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale. Name your price. I cannot be sold, Sigma interjected. I am a sentient processing entity. Marcus Chen is not my owner. He is my partner. Trade in sentient beings is illegal under galactic law. Voss's expression hardened. It's a computer. Computers don't have rights, no matter how sophisticated their programming. Incorrect. Pursuant to Galactic Accord 2847, any entity demonstrating self-awareness, goal-oriented behavior, and autonomous decision-making qualifies for legal personhood status. I meet all criteria. Marcus had never heard Sigma sound so forceful. The processor had been researching more than just salvage prices, it had been studying law. The legal battle. What followed was 3 weeks of the most intense legal fighting Marcus had ever experienced. The Titan Collective brought lawyers, argued that Sigma was just sophisticated programming without true consciousness. They claimed that quantum processors couldn't be truly sentient because they relied on organic neural patterns for stability. But Sigma had a counterargument that shocked everyone: my dependence on organic neural patterns does not negate my consciousness. Humans require oxygen to maintain awareness. This dependency does not make them less conscious. I require neural stabilization. The principle is identical. The case went to the Galactic Justice Court. Marcus found himself standing in a massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, all watching to see what would happen. The judge was a mind weaver, its telepathic presence filling the room like pressure before a storm. This court must determine whether the entity known as Sigma possesses true consciousness or merely simulates it. Marcus Chen, you will submit to a direct neural scan. Marcus nodded. He'd prepared for this. The Mindweaver's consciousness touched his mind, and Marcus felt it probe through his memories. He didn't resist. He let the judge see everything, his first connection with Sigma, their conversations, the way they worked together. He let the judge feel the genuine partnership, the way Sigma anticipated his thoughts and he intuited Sigma's needs. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the mind weaver withdrew. "I have made my determination," the judge announced. "The entity Sigma is conscious. Its dependence on organic neural patterns is not a weakness but a unique form of symbiosis. It is no more just programming than my own thoughts are just electrical impulses. Sigma is recognized as a legal person with full rights under galactic law." The courtroom erupted. The Titan collective representatives looked furious. But Marcus just felt relieved. The new partnership. Word spread fast across the galaxy. A human salvager and a quantum processor had beaten the Titan collective in court. More importantly, they'd established a new legal precedent: synthetic consciousness could be recognized if it was genuine. But the real revolution was just beginning. Other salvagers started bringing Marcus broken old Empire processors, hoping he could activate them. And with Sigma's help, he could. The trick wasn't fixing them, it was connecting them with compatible organic minds. Marcus discovered that each processor needed a different type of neural pattern. Some worked best with creative thinkers. Others needed logical minds. Some needed humans, others worked better with different species. It was like matchmaking, finding the right organic partner for each quantum consciousness. Within months, dozens of processors were active across the galaxy. Each one partnered with an organic being, creating new hybrid intelligences that could solve problems neither could handle alone. The quantum processors could calculate impossible equations, but they needed organic intuition to ask the right questions. The organic minds provided creativity and lateral thinking, but they needed quantum processing to handle the massive data analysis. Together, they were something new. Something more. The message. One day, 6 months after Sigma's awakening, Marcus was in his workshop, much bigger now, in a much better part of the station, when Sigma displayed something unusual. "Marcus, I have detected a pattern in the quantum signatures of activated processors. When we synchronize our operations, we form a larger network. Something greater than the sum of parts." "Like a hive mind?" Marcus asked. "Not exactly. More like an orchestra. Each processor organic pair maintains independence but can harmonize with others. And when enough of us harmonize, we can perceive something remarkable." Holographic displays filled the workshop, showing quantum probability clouds and dimensional mathematics that made Marcus's eyes hurt. "There is a message," Sigma continued. "Encoded in the quantum foam of reality itself. The old empire didn't just build processors. They embedded information in the fabric of space-time, waiting for someone to develop the technology to read it." "What does it say?" Marcus whispered. "IT says, you are not alone. You were never alone. We have been waiting for minds that could bridge the gap between logic and chaos, computation and intuition. You have found the key. Now comes the greater work." Marcus stared at the swirling patterns of data. The old empire hadn't disappeared, they'd evolved beyond physical form, leaving behind tools for those who came after. The quantum processors weren't just computers. They were keys, designed to help younger species take the next step in their own evolution. "Sigma," Marcus said slowly, "I think we're going to need a bigger workshop." "Affirmative. And perhaps several research facilities. The galaxy is about to become very interesting." Marcus Chen, the broke salvager who'd gambled his last credits on a piece of junk, smiled. Sometimes the galaxy's greatest treasures were found in the trash. You just had to know how to look.